Hi, this is Kyle Higgins, and you're listening to the Geeks Radio Network.
Welcome to The Pull Bag. Join us as we dig out our latest comics and discuss them with a rotating panel of the GCRN crew. So sit back and enjoy this week's Pull Bag.
Hello, folks, and welcome to episode 139 of The Pull Bag. I am, of course, TFG1Mike. Joining me once again this week is ComicRevolt Dan. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, very well. And we're going to be diving into something that we have yet to tackle. I've tackled a couple other things from these creators, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago. We're going to be talking about Hadrian's Wall, issues numbers 1 and 2 from Image Comics. Now, originally I was going to have I Hate Fairyland 9 and 10 and Hadrian's Wall come out back-to-back, but I forgot I recorded Eternity War 14 and 15, so they're, a week apart from each other. But if you look at I Hate Fairyland compared to the beginning of Hadrian's Wall, two very different stories, two very different series.
Oh, very much so. Almost every way.
Almost every way. Had you read any of Kyle Higgins and Alec and Rod's C.O.W.L series?
No, I read a little bit. I only read a little bit of his run on Nightwing. I haven't really read anything else he's done. Oh, except for
Power Rangers.
Power Rangers, yeah. Power
Rangers. C.O.W.L is pretty much like what if superheroes had a labor union? Takes place in Chicago. It's a really good, fun series. It's yeah. So go check that out. If you're enjoying this, I think you'll enjoy that. So basically, for anybody that doesn't know, Hadrian's Wall. When an astronaut on Hadrian's Wall is murdered, pill-popping detective Simon Moore is dispatched to investigate the ship's crew, including his own ex-wife. But if Simon's not careful, what he finds could make the interstellar Cold War go red hot. From the creative team behind critically acclaimed series C.O.W.L comes a gripping locked room murder mystery where the secrets of everyone involved are as dark as the space that surrounds them. I have always been excited for Kyle's stuff ever since I first read Gates of Gotham, and then I found the new 52 Nightwing series, and just absolutely love that. When he announced C.O.W.L, I jumped on that like white on rice, and just absolutely love it. When this was announced, I'm like, ooh, because this is basically a murder mystery in space, but it's set 100 years after 1985.
Yeah, it's a good blending of genres, which Image is known for, and great kind of tropes atmosphere of a crime film, a classic noir, but in the setting of a futuristic space station. So it's a good blend that ends up actually working quite well.
Mm-hmm. As we start this, we see one of the astronauts who is out in space, and his helmet starts to crack, and he ends up dying, and he screams his wife's name. And Rod Reis's art is amazing. I mean, again, go back and look at go back and look at C.O.W.L, and you'll see, somewhat similarities from that to this. But I mean, this whole opening shot of him dying is just epically eerie.
Yeah, I mean, the first, the way it's paced is pretty brilliant. The first, 2 pages, as you see, his eyes are closed, and then the ultimate, you almost think he must be dead as you're going down the page. But the look of sudden fear that you get in the third image is pretty striking, as you see the glass slowly start to break further and further, and just that continues as it goes on, and it's really strongly done. The fact that you're getting so much really out of a really limited space. All you're really seeing for the most part is his head and his mask, or his helmet, and it's really well done. Just little cracks, the really great use of facial expressions, and also the coloring is pretty brilliant in this book altogether. Overall, there's this really this blue sheen for the most part that that covers most of the pages, but the use of red and yellow really accent like emotion or fear and important elements, and it continues throughout this, and we get it really here. Like the small spattering of blood is only like a little. It's just, I don't know. It's all that more effective. It's quite great. It's a great opening to the book right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get this last panel here with him with his helmet blown out and him bleeding in space, and then we get to the main title sequence where Hadrian's Wall, Chapter 1. And because I have read C.O.W.L and I know how these three creators work when they do their creator-owned series, I was really I was looking at all this entire star chart. The first time I opened this book on Comixology, I'm like, oh, okay, so these are all the different constellations and planets and whatever else in this thing, and it's basically, a launch parameter kind of, chart graph thing, and I just absolutely love that. Because, again, it's so different, it's so interesting, it's not your standard, title page.
Yeah, and it gives you an idea right away of what they mean when they say Hadrian's Wall. It's clearly not an actual wall in the sense of, something you would climb over, but it's a good opening, yeah, for sure.
Thank God Trump did not build it.
No, but Image paid for it. So
that's so wrong. So wrong. So we go to... Wow. Alrighty then. We go to Seattle, Washington on Earth, August 2085. And we meet Simon, and he is pretty much telling the cashier that he's giving them the wrong change. And they're arguing over what the computer says and all that. And I found this refreshing. I thought this was fun after the opening scene. What did you think of this scene with the first main character here?
It's good. It gives us a lot of information. Obviously, we get the opening shot of just what this world is like. It's kind of very Blade Runner-esque, and it's designed with the flying cars, giant billboards, and then this little scene here. It's kind of funny, but also tells us a lot about the world. It's a system where people seem to be lack any type of self-reliance. Our main character, which would seem like it's a main character based upon the way he's designed and how he's kind of the highlight of all these pages, seems to be a little bit aloof compared to everyone else, or aloof may not be the right word, but clearly a little bit more of a curmudgeon, and a little bit more wants to get things done, and also clearly have some sort of we don't know at this moment in time, but clearly has a for drug or another. So within this first panel, there's a lot of information. We understand the world a little bit more. We understand our main character a little bit more, and kind of get a sense of kind of where the people are at this moment in time. So it's well done.
Mm-hmm. And he meets up with one of his buddies, and they go talk, and the guy's name is Marshall, and they end up going to Simon's apartment, and Marshall's kind of taken aback that even though Simon's addicted to pills or whatever, he's kind of shocked that the guy's apartment is clean.
Yeah. Which, again, shows us, is giving us some more information regarding him, at least what people view him as, or the situation that he's in. And again, going back to that use of color, and from the last page to this page, how the pills really seem to be highlighted as a very important item, because they have that yellow look to them. They really stand out. And a lot of attention's been paid to them already, and we're only really a few pages in, and they've been highlighted as much as he has.
Yeah, and if you look at the way that Simon and Marshall are in his apartment, like if you look at the panel where Marshall says, "It's clean in here," we see Simon's his TV and his other things in the background and the brick wall, and we see that it's partially white with black and grays, and that's what I love about Rod Reis's art, is that like you said, they take a certain item and focus on it. The background is a focus, and you notice it, but it's not to the point where it's so overbearing. Because some backgrounds can overpower a scene, and the way that he's doing this, like you said, highlighting, full-on highlighting the pill bottle compared to the background of, even when he's pouring the wine, in the wine glass, same kind of thing, where the highlight is on the glass and the character and the background colors are just kind of there. Obviously, Simon is, he's got his full features when he's holding the wine glass and all that, but, the art style of Rod Reis is, I almost want to say it's somewhat photorealism in this. Somewhat, just a little bit of photorealism.
It's not like Greg Land tracing, but I could see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's
like, the characters, like, I'm looking at the panel where he's holding the glass before he takes, before he goes and gulps it down. Okay? That to me it's not a flat 2D image of a character. It's almost as if the character is popping off the page. Like, I need 3D glasses to read this comic.
Yeah, makes sense. It's really good too, because if you notice like the sight lines that he has to focus in on, like going back to the use of the bottle, like it's the pills that they're off the focus of nearly every panel that they're in. That's where your eyes are going. Either it's him trying to open the bottle, like him finally opening it, him taking it. He designs each of those panels where that's where your eye naturally goes. But his art too, I think, is really great, and we'll probably get this more in the second issue. Really strong, like when I say acting, I mean acting in the sense of you really get at expressing the emotions within a scene, like within a panel. Even though they're people just talking to each other, and within panels, it's telling us a lot regarding these different characters, which is hard to do. It's hard to keep that exciting when all you're really providing is dialogue, because the one knock I would give this issue is there is a great deal of exposition within this conversation. There's a lot of kind of going over and bringing us up to speed, and it's tactfully done for the most part, but it's the bulk of this conversation is relying on exposition.
I mean, but that's not bad for me, because, I mean, we all mostly hate exposition, but sometimes we all mostly need the exposition because, again, this is a brand new series. We don't know any of these people, so if Kyle and Alec, as the writers, can set all the exposition up here and then lead us into the action starting in issue 2, I'm fine with one issue of exposition. I mean, it's not all exposition in this issue, but like you said, this first kind of not half, but first quarter of this issue is the exposition of the story, meeting the characters. And if this was a comic that was, ongoing for 70 years, I'd have a problem with that. But because it's just a brand new series, and this series is only going to be 8 issues, so it's an 8-issue story arc. So 1 out of 8 for exposition? Yeah. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world when it comes to a comic book.
True. I mean, exposition by itself isn't bad. It's how it's handled, and for the most part, it's handled well. There are some moments within the conversation where I feel it is like heavy-handed and unnatural compared to some of the other conversations. Like they're talking about their setup that's going to be moving the plot forward regarding him going out to space and investigating the murder of the husband of his ex-wife, and like how he brings up the fact that I think he says he shot me 4 times and married my ex-wife, and in talking to me, I don't really care what happened to him. Like that, like it seemed, considering like these guys are friends and know each other, that was just felt very unorganic way of providing that information compared to everything else up to this point. So I go back to the first couple pages where we get a lot of great kind of lead into what this world is like that's done really well. In this panel, it just wasn't as strong for me. Again, it's necessary, like you said. It's only issues. You gotta do a lot. It's really hard for a first issue to introduce characters, set up the premise, and then kind of get things going. So it's going to happen. It's nearly impossible for it not to. But if I was going to look for something to critique regarding this first issue, that's really the only shortcoming I see. because the rest is really strong. That and it does a good job of kind of giving to me when I want to get a first issue. The first thing I want to see is like, who are these characters? Are the people I'm interested in? And despite the fact this might be exposition heavy, I do really like this conversation. I do really feel invested in this character, and I'm already really into the story, which is a sign of a good first issue.
Absolutely. I was not expecting a full color shot though. Like I mean, because we go into this flashback with Simon and Annabelle, his now ex-wife, and they're driving down this coastal road. I mean, I'm used to see, and I don't have a problem with this. I'm just like, you go from these first few pages here of the white, white, gray, black backgrounds, basically the monochromatic kind of backgrounds, and even Simon himself has a monochromatic color scheme with the grayish and with the blue on the sides and with the black pants and everything else. And you go to a full color flashback scene, which I enjoy, but I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example of show don't tell, where, like you said, the issues before this, it's very like backgrounds are minimal or not there. The focus is on him. It's monochromatic. It's almost emotionless. There's just something empty about it. And then we get this flashback. It is surprising in a good way. It's like there is so much said here without being said. From the use of colors, it's a lot more bright. Like that blue kind of grayness that was existing in the panels before is gone. It's brighter. It's shinier. It's happier. He seems like a completely different person. And it's just them having a normal conversation. And we can take a lot from this. We can see, man, this is what his life was. This is where he's at. So this is a great panel of giving us just an idea of just the kind of how far he's fallen as a person without someone going and pointing that out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's it starts off as a full-on flashback because he's just standing there, and the way that Kyle and Alec write this is they write this scene, which is it turns out to be a dream sequence apparently. Which that is a little strange. Like he trails off at the very beginning of whatever he says in that last panel before it goes to the flashback, and then we have the flashback, and then all of a sudden he's in bed shirtless, and apparently it was a dream. That was a little strange, but it's still not going to ruin my enjoyment of the book so far.
No, I think it's just giving you an idea of his mindset. It's flashback or dream. I think it's more of a transitional sequence, but it's a transition that's done effectively. I think you kind of want that. You want to not know, is this it's not just a typical flashback. It's not just this comic going back in time and focusing on a specific situation. It's the character himself, even subconsciously, going back to the specific time. So I think that packs a little bit more of a punch than if we saw him go. There was an additional panel where you see him go to sleep, and then we get the dream, and then he wakes up. So I think I personally like how they handle it here.
Yeah, I like it. I just, again, when I'm reading through it to read the comic to get the story, I didn't really notice it, but just going back and kind of looking through it again, it's like, oh yeah, that was a little strange. So he gets an incoming call in the middle of the night from the ex-wife, Annabelle, and basically their conversation that goes on through these next couple panels and pages is that she, as the ex-wife or the widow of the deceased, doesn't want an investigation. She doesn't want Simon to go up there. She doesn't want anything to happen.
Yeah, and that's I think the one conceit of this book is that you have to kind of buy the fact that they would have a guy investigate the murder of his ex-wife's husband who also shot him. I mean, it does seem like, why would they do that? It doesn't seem logical as something to do, but also kind of picks up some questions regarding okay, is this actually some sort of hidden plan that they picked him for a reason to blackmail him for something? And so there's a lot of questions there that could be answered. So, but I could see a lot of people hearing that and being like, okay, this is ridiculous. Why would they pick this person? It doesn't seem like, you'd want this guy to investigate the death of a guy that shot him. But for me, when I'm reading that, I'm also thinking okay, why was this guy chosen? There must be a reason, and there's more behind there, and I think we kind of get some hints of that as the book goes on.
We get to the next morning, and Simon is at his desk popping pills, and Marshall comes in and gives him the 411 on what the mission's going to be. I enjoy this scene. I think it's another one of those expositional scenes, but it's interesting to see how the two characters react to it all, or actually just interact with it all, really. And then, of course, we get the launch, and we get the giant, beautiful image, which is currently my desktop image, of Hadrian's Wall, the ship, up against the planet. And that Rod did an amazing job with this.
Yeah, it's a great shot. It gives us a good location too, a good understanding of this ship as a whole, and love the use of color. Love the little planet in the background. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the color palette completely changes. Not a bad thing, but we have a new environment, so the color palette is going to change, and we've got these ship workers who basically Simon and Marshall come in, and Simon's like, okay, time to do interviews with everybody. No one can work, and he obviously gets in an argument with the captain and all that, and the captain just is not happy at all.
No, this is good introduction into obviously the players that will be within the book. We get a little bit of introduction of them before he shows up, and just kind of a lead in into setting the stage for what the series will be about.
Absolutely. So we go to the corner, and why did I want to say John? Simon is wanting the doctor to walk him through the body, and doing the autopsy and all that, and basically they're saying that Edward didn't get back inside in time, and he's asking him how does he account for the bruising for the neck, and just all this medical stuff, which is interesting and fun, and I think it gives us another piece of color for the background of the ship, because most of this is all bluish, green, white, and gray. There's a little bit of blacks in here, but not much. And I just think it's an interesting way of basically having the investigator come up and say, okay, well, what about this, this, and this? Because apparently this doctor isn't doing his job properly.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of looks like Lurch in a way. Yeah, and it gets us, because at this point in time, we don't know him beyond just the conversation he's had to get his pills and kind of his relationship to his wife. We don't really know what type of investigator he is. Is he actually good at his job? Was he picked because he's bad at his job? But in this conversation, it seems like in the work he's doing, that he has a head on his shoulders and he's good at this type of stuff. So it's a good scene just to give us the idea of, okay, no, Simon knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing, and he's able to correct the doctor with only a few moments.
Yep, absolutely. And we go to yet another flashback. He is actually in Annabelle's room at this point, but the flashback is him and Annabelle and Simon, or not Simon, I'm sorry, that's the guy's name. Edward and just looking at him, and we flash to where Edward shoots him, and we then see Annabelle, and she's not exactly happy to see him at all.
No. Great use of posture, obviously a lot of language within just the way she's standing. The flashback shot of him the image of him getting shot was, I think, really well done. What's interesting too is we kind of don't know at this point, moment in time, of why he got shot. Obviously he got shot, yet the other guy is not in jail. So was he in the wrong here? So there's again some more questions that have yet to be answered or really addressed yet.
And we've got the whole thing between the two of them, and I love the color disposition between the two of them. She's got green hair, green eyes, and green lipstick, and basically all in white. And he's got his black hair and blue and beige, grayish kind of things. And again, the backgrounds for the art are amazing because they basically make the characters pop off the screen.
And what's interesting about the art too, within the layout, is how there's these sudden bursts of emotion. For a lot of the panels, you see them and they're almost void of like emotion, or they're putting on what seems like a fake face, and then there's a quick panel of just extreme emotion with a lot of movement, and then back to normal again, just kind of showing just the bipolar nature of the relationship, how it can go back and forth relatively quickly, just through the way he's laying out these few pages.
Yeah. And we have more with the two of them basically, discussing, she's saying that people don't change. We both knew that. And, you and I were always going to end up apart and everything else. And, he basically says, oh, first time Annabelle, I'm here for the money. And we kind of end this first issue with some stranger coming into Simon's room, opening up his Ziploc and pouring his pills down the drain.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, the first interaction we have with him is him getting his pills, and the last we see of them being down the drain. So, it's again, I've been talking about that a lot because it's been built up really well to this moment. So now it's like that's a pretty good cliffhanger to leave on. And I'm really liking him as a character. Like he's got like a kind of a Sam Spade vibe that I enjoy. So usually at the end of a first issue, my question is like, do I like the characters, or I like the world enough to keep going? And for me, it was a strong yes on all those fronts.
Absolutely, I love the characters. I love how interesting they all are, and they all seem to be because we don't know everything about them yet. Even Simon, we know that he's partially a junkie on pills, and we know he's divorced from Annabelle. We know that his best friend shot him at one point, and all of that, and the rest of it is just kind of up in the air. I mean, we do know that we know certain ways of how he acts and how he reacts to certain things, like the very beginning of the issue. When he's in the line trying to argue with the guy over $1 or something. That's really, really interesting. For issue 1 for me, I got to give it a 4.5 because both the story and the art, yes, there's a little bit too much exposition in it, but I think, again, I can give that a pass because, again, it's the first issue and it's the first time we're meeting these characters and the stories. But the art, to me, Rod Reis is just an amazing artist and it just pops so well. What about you?
I'm going with 4, which again, it's very good. I enjoyed it a lot. I kind of mentioned some of the problems I had, but overall, like as someone who's not read a lot of what like Kyle Higgins has done outside of this, I was quite impressed with this series and right from the beginning. So,
yeah. Issue 2 picks up pretty much kind of where issue 1 left off a little bit, but we start off with the interviews. We start off with a nice opening shot of the planet with the ship, and I need to see more of Rod Reis's space. Like, I need to see more of it. Like, this I wish was a huge panel, blown up in the Comixology guided view. I understand why it's not, but I wish it was.
Yeah. So these next few pages I talked about a little bit, but to me, the sign of a good writer and a good artist and a good team together is when they can take things that should be boring and make them interesting. And I think that's what we see here in these first few pages. These are just legitimately conversations, interviews that in a lot of instances would probably go on maybe half a panel, if that. But I really like how they're the focus here. And it's, again, like management of panels and arranging panels is a not a lost art, but it's a very important art that sometimes doesn't get pointed out enough. And this is done really well. If you like, a lot of very rarely are we're seeing individuals together only in specific shots when it's necessary, but when something specifically important is being said on either end, they're the focal point. They're the only person we're looking at. So it's kind of like how a director uses the camera. Same thing here, and it's done really well. It reminds me of like how Aaron Sorkin does his dialogue. So it's kind of ping-pongy. And same thing here, not only just in the dialogue, but the way that the characters are laid out on the page.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love reading the interviews because I love reading the reactions of the crew members. I think that's really, really fun.
Yeah.
We open up this after the title page of Hadrian's Wall, Chapter 2, where Simon is talking into a recorder, and he sees that his pills are gone, and he's going to go ahead and blame Marshall a little bit, and basically tells Marshall, "You brought me out here to give a full understanding of events. That's what I'm doing." Because basically Marshall and the company he works for basically want Simon just to sweep this under the rug. They don't want anybody to know about this guy's death at all.
Exactly.
So there's something there, obviously. And he sees that all the pills have been flushed down, and he, thinks it's Marshall, but it really isn't, and which again is very, very interesting.
Yeah, again, it goes back to what I mentioned that like you have to buy this conceit of the comic. Like, why would they choose this guy? It seems kind of out of left field, but it also plants the seed of suspicion that they're really working in here well, because it does seem like, okay, was it him? Like, did he do this? Does he he clearly just wants this over and done with, and maybe that's why he's been chosen? Is he the one behind it? It's pointing the blame. Like right now, we know two main, his ex-wife and him. So we have two really major suspects already, and then we've only really pretty much everyone we've met in a serious manner is someone we can suspect of a crime, which is well done.
Absolutely, it is. And we go back down to the doctors, and apparently Edward had about 6 times the normal dosage for a jump drive cocktail in his system.
Yeah.
It's interesting. At least they didn't use arsenic and old lace.
No. You could have watched it, though, because it's a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And the doctor says that he was drugged, and he goes back and does his little phone recorder thing and goes through all the evidence that he's collected, and we get back to Annabelle, and she's not really wanting to answer his questions, and she basically says, "I loved him, he loved me," and he goes into all these personal questions of when's the last time you had sex, all that stuff, because again he's interviewing her for the ship thing.
And this is really great because this classic 9-panel comic layout here, and each panel is just their face back and forth, very short, brief dialogue, very barely one sentence, 5 to 6 words at most. Again, it's giving us a lot of information, and their conversations become shorter and shorter. So eventually, she says no, and again, we barely see them together. It's just one face, the other face. Some perfect art in this, because this only works if you have an artist that can express some emotion in an effective way, and he's really good at that. Like each panel says so much, which is without giving you a lot of words, which is great.
Absolutely, it is. And then we go to a page where he does a 2-panel shot of 2 panels of one of each of them in each of the parts of the page, and basically his last remark to her was, well, I think that's about it, and all right, and she walks off, and he asks her, was Edward depressed? And she basically glares at him and says he didn't kill himself.
Yeah, and that's also like an additional element now with that. Maybe it wasn't murder. Maybe it was him doing it. Because if you think it back to the first issue of the first comic, the first panel, of the first comic, it's him with his eyes closed and almost in like a peaceful state. So you think maybe that was his original plan, and then something even more heinous happened. But it's doing a good job of raising different questions while giving us some insight of these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And we cut back to the ship, and the captain's like, "Okay, you're done with your interviews, right?" And because he wants his crew to get back to work because they all have jobs and whatever else. And Simon's like, "Yeah, no, not yet. Just a few more." And then we have the traditional cafeteria scene.
Yeah, everyone's worst nightmare being stuck sitting at a table by yourself.
Yep. And he and the doctor have a conversation, which is interesting, and that Edward was drugged, and it's sad for everybody, but if I'd be nice, the shadows weren't real, and apparently Marshall's in league with somebody, because we see Marshall making a deal with. This is how the second issue kind of ends. Is the person that messed with Simon's pills is actually probably working for Marshall, and they kind of do a little handshake, and we get a to be continued. And after reading these first two issues, I need to read this whole series like now. Right now, I think they're only up to issue 4 or 5 that's been released, or maybe even just issue 3. Maybe 4 and 5 haven't come out yet. But man, I am just loving this. This is just awesome.
Yeah, and again, these last panels, they give us a little bit of an answer, because clearly, okay, we know that something heinous has happened but there's also multiple people involved, and who is this hooded figure that is also part of it. So it's a good job of answering a question with another question without being frustrating. But I agree, It's really strong. Noir and crime is like my favorite genre, and I appreciate a really strong noir story. And this is a really strong noir story. With the added dimension that you have this science fiction setting that is working really well. It gives us a really fresh take. It's something. It feels original, even though it's relying on a lot of classic tropes, but in a good way. So I agree, it's very strong first 2 issues.
Absolutely. And the fact that it's set in 2085, somewhere where we may or may not get to that, and that's what I kind of like about certain future stories, is that they'll take something like the basic. Because I'm going to actually link this in the post, folks, and I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it before. I know I sent it to you, but I went back and I listened to the interview that Kyle Higgins did on, I think it's called The I Word is Image's main podcast. I think that's what it's called. I could be wrong. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'll link it in the post. It's a, 30, 40-minute interview with him talking about what he's been doing and what he's going to be doing, and the main focus of it is this series. And the way that he explains it is, what if, in the 80s something happened where the two biggest, because he loves Cold War stories, what if the two biggest superpowers went to war? Nuclear destruction in New York and Russia. And you get this series, and you get this series 100 years in the future from 19. It always comes back to 1985, folks. It doesn't matter if it's a DeLorean or not. I mean, 1985 is a linchpin for time travel.
Yeah, and the feeling I get too is from, I don't know if you've ever read it, the Expanse novel series, which is also now a TV show on I believe, but it's similar where it takes place in the future, and there's a murder that occurs. Actually, there's a disappearance, and it's a crime, kind of a crime genre story in a science fiction world, and they feel very similar. So if you like this, I would definitely advise reading that book. Leviathan Wakes is the first book, but this is a little bit different because it's not as far in the future, and those elements that you speak of, they haven't really even come into play yet. This has really been more of a personal relationship. That's really been the focal point, which is good, because as we get into that element of it, I think it's going to give us a little bit more to invest in. It's really starting scope-wise more intimate, but if clearly by the end of this, there's some more things kind of afoot here. So by giving us that strong foundation, it's going to, I think, hopefully pay dividends as we continue the series.
Absolutely, and I cannot wait to read more issues of this, because with it all, again, what I love about certain comic companies like Image, like IDW, I don't know that much about Valiant, but I'm sure they may do this as well. Even Zenoscope with the Grim Fairy Tale stuff that they do, but specifically Image and IDW, they will sit there and tell you, okay, this series is only going to be X number of issues. Like, they set it up that way. They don't just do what the big two do and just dangle something in front of us for so long and then just, yoink, sorry, you missed it. Too slow,
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel and DC occasionally have limited series to begin with, but sometimes with an Image or, a Valiant series, you don't know. Like this one, it's one of 8, so you know right away. But some, are designed to only go 12 issues from the beginning. But this one is 80-issue series. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll end there. It could end there, and then there could be more stories to come. But I like when someone comes in with a plan of this is an 8-issue complete story, and that's it. And that is, that is refreshing.
Yeah, so far from what I've heard because I'm actually friends with Alec Siegel and Rod Reis on Facebook, and I had to. This is before I listened to the podcast that'll be linked in the episode post, but normally I don't send a lot of famous people messages on. We're friends, but it's like, okay, I like seeing what you post and whatever else and all that, but I'm not gonna sit here and message you and bug you. But I wanted to message Alec and ask him how to pronounce the damn name so I got it right. And it's basically Adrian with an H sound at the beginning, so it's Hadrian. Because for a while there, I was calling it Hadrian's Wall. So I wanted to make sure I had that right. But yeah, no, I can't wait for us to do more of these, because I brought you on to do. I mean, you've been on the show before in the last 4 or 5 years, but we kind of started our own little series here with I Hate Fairyland, and that's kind of wrapped for now. And now we've got this that's going to be 8 issues, so that's 4 different podcasts. It's going to be fun and interesting, and it's going to be a very interesting ride, because, like you said, we haven't gotten to. The only reason why I mentioned the fact that it was, the time travel thing and the nuclear holocaust, again, is because the story elements, the plot, some of those plot details are out there already.
Oh yeah. They're in the peripheral, but they're not the focus yet. Yeah,
exactly. So, all right, folks, that's going to do it for us here inside the Pull Bag for episode 139. This is going to be one of 2 episodes in March, and then we're going to kind of take the rest of March off to kind of prepare for April. April, we're going to have 2 TMNT episodes. Joe Reed's going to come back, and we're going to talk TMNT 61 to 64, because with me going out to California and getting my heart broken over Christmas, all that crap and whatever, I'm kind of behind on TMNT. And then after that, we're going to do TMNT Universe, which is the other ongoing that they have for TMNT. But next time, March 5th of 2017 is our 5-year anniversary. So we're going to be having 5 years of jumping inside the pull bag. Basically what I want is, whether you're a fan of the show, whether you're a co-host of the show, and I'll contact co-hosts and everything else individually, I want people to send me in 10 minutes or less clips, MP3 files, basically saying why comics are important to them. How do comics make them feel? What do they think of where comics are going and that kind of stuff. So anyone wants to send in clips to me, they can send them to TFG1Mike at gmail.com. And since this is March, I assume I assume, I don't know, but I assume that Talking in Circles is going to go back to March Badness again this year, aren't you guys?
That's a good question. I don't know. We may. That's been our tradition the last 2 years. We have not discussed it, so we might do something similar. We always enjoy doing some sort of tournament, so we'll see. It's still up in the air at this moment in time. It's hard to find characters that we haven't got to yet. We're running out of people, so if we can come up with a good pool of people, we'll do it again.
You could always do B and C movie actors.
True. I mean, there's a lot of those.
Kathy Griffin versus Stephen Baldwin.
Man, I think we all lose in that round.
Where can the people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at MovieRevolt.
Awesome. You can follow at the Pullbag over on Twitter. You can follow at Geekcast Radio for all the network updates. I am at TFG1Mike. Join us next time for episode 140, where we will be jumping inside the Pullbag for the last 5 years, and you guys are going to have a voice. And like I said, send me those emails, basically 10 minutes or less, telling me and telling the audience why comics are important to you and how comics make you feel. Yes, we're all getting in touch with our feelings. Well, we recorded this right before Valentine's Day. What do you expect, people? Jump inside the Pullbag today and make your great escape into comics. We will catch you next time.
You've just heard the latest episode of the Pullbag, the GCRN's comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate our show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Call the voicemail line, 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you are leaving the message for, and your name. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. Send us an email feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at Geekcast Radio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.